Welcome to Group 8's presentation on international and domestic strategies. Our group is composed of Kristen, Vitali, Ryan, and Amanda. The goal of this presentation is to provide some insight into the different challenges an organization will face when crafting a domestic strategy versus an international strategy. We have broken the presentation into three sections. First, we will provide an introduction, including a concise definition of strategy used for the purpose of this discussion. Second, we will look at how domestic and international strategies may differ in the context of several aspects of business management. Third, we will share some examples of these concepts using the framework of Porter's 5 forces. From business literature, there appear to be as many definitions of business strategy as there are business strategies themselves. So that there is a common understanding of what is meant by business strategy in this discussion, we offer the following brief definitions of strategy. A strategy is a unique combination of choices and activities that distinguishes a product or service, thereby generating competitive advantage. Understanding of the competitive landscape, including advantages, disadvantages, risks, opportunities, unique capabilities, and synergies, and finding a position in the landscape which optimizes value capture. Whether competing internationally, domestically, or both, it is crucial to have a business strategy. A strategy should define how resources will be applied and why. By definition, strategies are unique and will vary significantly by industry, company, country, and region. A strategy which is very successful in the U.S. may not work even in countries which are culturally similar. Due to the large investment typical of expanding into international trade, it is the manager's responsibility to ensure due diligence in crafting an international strategy. We will be discussing domestic versus international strategies with regard to the following: financial planning, situation analysis, human resources, growth strategies, and marketing and advertising. We recognize that there are many more aspects to a business strategy, but feel that this list provides a good variety across multiple business challenges. When crafting a strategy, one must consider what choice to make with respect to financial planning. Sources of revenue and expenditures, such as operations costs, support costs, and costs of facilities and capital expenditures, and associated profit margins all play into a successful financial strategy. Successful management includes anticipation of potential variations in costs, revenues, and profits. Most managers likely have an understanding of the range of variation in a domestic business. When dealing internationally, in a country other than one's own, understanding the potential variation becomes significantly more complex. One must consider how variation in such things as exchange rates, cost of raw materials, logistics, and workforce will affect the finances of the operation. Situation analysis is a common tool used in domestic businesses to understand one's place in the market and strategize accordingly. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. Unfortunately, a company's domestic strengths are not necessarily strengths in other countries. Retail clothing companies, such as Gap, may have a strength in anticipating and leading mainstream fashion trends in the U.S., but may struggle to simultaneously keep up, let alone lead, trends in Europe and Asia. On the other hand, Levi's 501 jeans may see brand image as fair in the U.S., but as a huge strength in China. Corporations often move into international trade because of the perceived opportunities, but a company may not see the additional threats. It is possible that selling a product in a previously untapped country will invite competition in that country, which may lead to future increase in competition in the U.S. Management of employees in domestic corporations generally fall within a well-understood business norms and legal limits. Often, HR representatives are required to deal with sensitive personal and ethical issues, and judgments are made based on shared cultural values. Within the U.S., HR policies and procedures and structures can easily be cloned at different sites with little or no need for customization. When operating in a different country, whether through a partnership or wholly owned foreign enterprise, HR policies developed in the U.S. will likely need to be modified or rewritten for foreign operations. Many foreign nations, particularly in Europe, may be more culturally diverse than the U.S., with employees from all over Europe and North Africa working alongside. Asian operations may be less culturally diverse than the U.S. Developing policies and procedures that take into consideration a wide variety of cultures and norms will likely be complex. In order to effectively recruit necessary talent, one must understand the anticipated mix of salary and benefits, bonus compensation, working days, and hours and host countries' laws. A good example is maternity and paternity leave in Europe. In the US, maternity and paternity leave likely represent a minor portion of total compensation paid, with little allowed time off. In contrast, laws and cultural norms in some European countries allow months of paid leave for employees. A common growth strategy in the US, after initial market penetration, is capture of additional market share where the change of a few percentage points in share can make a large difference in revenue. Companies may spend years or decades battling with competitors for a larger portion of a saturated market. Corporations will focus on leveraging their strengths and differentiating themselves from the competition to gain market share. Conversely, when determining to trade internationally, a company will more likely choose to enter a foreign market that has not yet been saturated, choosing to avoid stepping into an existing battle. For many corporations, this will include learning how to focus on market penetration again. A goal will be to introduce and educate about one's product instead of contrast and differentiate against one's competitors. Formulating a marketing and advertising strategy in a foreign market is likely one of the most difficult and risky aspects of foreign trade because effective marketing relies so heavily on a deep cultural and linguistic understanding. For example, a car from the 1970s called the Chevy Nova would not sell in Mexico because Nova translates to does not go. Similarly, a popular brand of bread in Spain and Latin America called Bimbo may not sell well in English-speaking markets. On the other hand, sale of a product in a foreign market which includes inherent reference to American culture may improve marketing strategy. Due to a wildly popular marketing campaign in 1974, Kentucky Fried Chicken sells a lot of fried chicken around Christmas time in Japan due to the recognition by Japanese consumers that fried chicken and Christmas are both culturally American. Do you purchase more Corona or Dos Equis near Cinco de Mayo? If so, is this because of an effective marketing strategy by Mexican beer companies? To finish, we will explore a few examples of international and domestic strategies in the framework of Porter's Five Forces model. Porter's Five Forces model evaluates competitiveness of a company with respect to five forces: bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of customers, threat of new entrants, threat of substitutes, and industry rivalry. Porter theorizes that a business strategy that limits the bargaining power of suppliers and customers, has large barriers to entry of new competitors, has few or no substitute products, and is not in a market with strong industry rivals, will result in larger profits. To say another way, each of these five forces drives down profitability for a corporation. In each case, a force which may be strong domestically may also be very weak in another country. Vice versa, a weak force in the US may be very strong in another market. Bargaining power of suppliers is usually limited when many potential sources of the purchased goods are available and when goods are not significantly distinguishable from one another. For example, a company which seeks to purchase steel domestically may pay a relatively high price due to limited steel production in the US. US suppliers may guarantee conformance to US manufacturing and quality standards, often driven by suppliers themselves. The company purchasing the steel may choose to engage in international trade to open competition to many more suppliers, thereby decreasing supplier bargaining power. The decrease in cost may justify additional testing or independent certification to US standards, making imports attractive. Bargaining power of customers is increased when demand is low or when many substitutes or alternatives exist. In the US, Hormel Foods cannot sell Spam in large volume at high prices because demand for canned meat is relatively low and many alternatives exist, fresh or cured meat. However, in Guam, Spam is wildly popular and alternatives are comparatively scarce. High demand and few alternatives in Guam decreases customers' bargaining power and allows Hormel to sell large quantities of Spam at relatively high prices. Threats of new entrants adversely affect the profitability of a product or service because companies cannot charge high prices without inviting many competitors to enter the market and possibly capture market share. Nutella was developed in Europe in the 1940s and enjoyed little competition. It was first exported to the US in the 1980s, but only marketed and sold in the Northeast, still without significant competition from new entrants. However, in the last decade, Nutella has been marketed and sold across the US. Recently, US manufacturers have developed and marketed competing products. One consequence of international trade is the possible inadvertent generation of new competitors. Substitute products are those, typically from wildly differing industries, which can be purchased or used in place of a company's product or service. Foreign markets likely have unique substitutes and varying availability of common substitutes, requiring custom strategies. For example, if a U.S. airline is considering new regional routes in the U.S., it will likely consider automobiles, RVs, or web meetings as significant alternatives. When considering whether to add regional routes in Europe or Southeast Asia, the airline will also need to consider travel by high-speed train. Industry rivalry drives down profits by lowering prices or requiring technology, quality, or efficiency improvements to maintain prices. A U.S. company which manufactures electronic components faces a much different set and likely fewer rivals in the U.S. than some other developed countries, such as China and Korea. Domestic strategy may include regular performance increases and some advertising directly to customers. Foreign strategy may need to be more focused on partnering with existing companies to license technology in order to not be a late entrant into an already competitive market. In conclusion, it is highly unlikely that a strategy developed in the U.S. will be effective in a foreign market without some modification. Due diligence is key. Expansion should be driven by sound logic and recognition of trade-offs between risks and opportunities. International business offers opportunities, but also includes changes to strengths, weaknesses, and threats. Often, the biggest changes to strategy will involve HR practices and marketing because both of these are heavily dependent on local culture. The use of Porter's Five Forces model provides examples of differing strategies when operating domestically and internationally. On behalf of Group 8, we hope you enjoyed the presentation and thank you for your time.